They said I was ungrateful and cut me off. Now they're begging for my help. I remember the exact moment they knocked on my door again. It had been 4 years since I last saw their faces. My brother, my sister-in-law, and my own mother, all standing on my porch like ghosts from a life I'd buried. They needed help, but they forgot one thing. I no longer needed them. My name is Marissa James, and this is the story of how the people I loved most in the world erased me from their lives because I dared to speak the truth. They called me ungrateful. They said I was selfish, dramatic, and disrespectful. And just like that, after years of support, sacrifices, and loyalty, I was cut off, as if I never mattered. At first, I thought it was a misunderstanding, a rough moment, a disagreement between family members that would blow over. But I was wrong. I wasn't just pushed away. I was erased. I cried myself to sleep for months, trying to understand how it all turned so cold. I had given them everything: money, time, support, love, and when I needed just a little of that back, they slammed the door in my face. But here's the thing about life: it turns. It always turns. And when it did, I was no longer the woman crying on the floor. I was the woman with power, purpose, and peace. And the very people who discarded me like trash were now the ones begging for my help. Please, Marissa, we didn't know things would be this bad. We need you. What would you do if the very people who betrayed you came back, asking you to save them? Tell me in the comments. Would you forgive them? Or would you walk away like they did to you? And don't forget to subscribe, because this story, my story, is just getting started. I always believed family meant forever. Growing up, I wasn't the favorite. My brother James was the golden child, charming, ambitious, and always saying the right things. My mother adored him. My father, before he passed, used to call him our pride. I didn't resent him for it, at least, not at first. I just tried harder. After college, I became the caregiver, the helper, the one who stayed behind when Mom had her surgery, when James and his wife, Angela, moved out of state. I managed the house, paid the bills when Mom couldn't, even gave money to James when he lost his job and was too embarrassed to tell Angela. There were always little cracks, moments where I felt used, forgotten. Like when Mom hosted a birthday dinner for James and invited 20 people. But on my birthday, she texted, "Hope you have a great day, sweetie," with a smiley face. Still, I brushed it off. That's what families do, right? We forgive. We don't keep score. But slowly, something started to shift. Angela started making comments, subtle, sharp. "It must be nice to have so much free time, Marissa." Or, maybe if you got married, you'd understand why we're so busy. I worked full-time. I took care of Mom. I cleaned that house from top to bottom every week. But to them, I was the single, childless woman who should just be grateful to be included. Then came the moment I'll never forget. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was helping Mom pay some overdue bills, again, and I mentioned that James hadn't paid back the $2,000 I lent him 6 months ago. I wasn't angry, just frustrated. I thought I could talk to my mother, maybe even get her to encourage him to take some responsibility. Instead, she looked at me, cold and sharp, and said, "You always find something to complain about. Why can't you just help without keeping score?" I froze. That night, I drove home in silence. It was raining, and I remember watching the wipers dance back and forth as my mind spiraled. Why did they get to ask for help without judgment? Why did I get labeled the bitter one for setting boundaries? A week later, James sent me a message. Not a thank you, not an apology, just a single line. "We think it's best if you take some time away from the family. Maybe reflect on how your attitude has affected things." Time away? Like I was a disease? That was the moment it started. The beginning of doubt, the beginning of pain, and the slow, aching realization that the people you love the most can be the ones who break you the deepest. The message James sent felt like a punch to the chest. "We think it's best if you take some time away from the family." As if I were a child being disciplined. As if I hadn't spent the last decade cleaning up their messes and holding everything together. But it didn't end there. 2 days after the message, I received an email from the bank, one of the joint accounts I had set up years ago to help my mother with her bills. I had been depositing part of my paycheck into it every month, I didn't even think twice. Until I opened the email and saw something strange. There were several large withdrawals, $500 here, $800 there, none of which I recognized. I logged into the account and saw it. Months of transactions, mostly cash. And then, payments to a contractor, landscaping services, electronics. My mother didn't own any of those things. She didn't have a garden. She barely left the house. I followed the breadcrumb trail and realized the money had been used to pay for James and Angela's home remodel. I felt the blood drain from my face. They hadn't just cut me off emotionally. They had been using me financially, quietly, consistently, without ever asking or even pretending to ask. The betrayal settled deep into my chest, like something rotten curling around my lungs. And worse, they didn't think I'd notice. I went to my mother the next day, heart pounding, hands shaking. I brought the statements. I brought the facts. She didn't even try to deny it. She just said, "It was a family account, and you said you wanted to help." That's when I understood. They hadn't misunderstood me. They didn't need time. They were perfectly aware of what they were doing. They had used me. And when I questioned it, when I dared to ask for some decency, they turned on me, cut me out, labeled me ungrateful, so they wouldn't have to feel guilty about what they'd done. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, holding that bank statement like it was a confession letter. The woman I was, the one who forgave everything, who believed love could fix anything, started to fade. In her place, something else grew. Not hatred, but clarity. They didn't deserve my loyalty. They had never earned it. And now, they'd lost it. You don't realize how alone you are until silence becomes your only company. After I confronted my mother, she stopped speaking to me entirely. No calls, no messages, nothing. As if I had committed a crime, when all I did was ask for truth. James blocked my number. Angela removed me from the family group chat, as if I had never existed. And just like that, I was erased. At first, I tried to fight it. I wrote a long letter, printed it, mailed it to my mother. I poured my heart out. I reminded her of all the moments we shared, watching movies when she was recovering from surgery, staying up with her when she had those anxiety attacks. I told her I didn't deserve this silence. Weeks passed. No answer. I started questioning everything. Was I really the problem? Had I been too dramatic? Too emotional? But the more I sat with the silence, the more I saw it for what it really was. A punishment for no longer being useful. Without the money, without the constant yes, I wasn't valuable to them. I wasn't family. I was a burden they wanted to forget. I cried more in those months than I had in my entire life. At night, I'd sit on the kitchen floor, the cold tile against my skin, trying to breathe through the waves of rejection. And the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the way it made me question my worth. How could the people who raised me throw me away so easily? But pain does something strange. It strips you down, forces you to look at who you are when no one else is watching. And in that stillness, something started to shift. I stopped trying to reach out. I stopped begging for acknowledgement. Instead, I turned inward. I started therapy. I joined a local women's support group, older women mostly, many with stories of being pushed aside after giving everything to their families. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who didn't need me to be useful to love me, who saw my pain and didn't look away. One day, after a particularly hard session, my therapist said something that stayed with me. "Marissa, anger isn't the enemy. It's a signal. It's telling you your boundaries were violated." And just like that, it clicked. My anger wasn't bitterness. It was truth. It was power. I had been taught all my life to be quiet, agreeable, generous to a fault. But now I saw that my kindness had been taken as weakness. And that was the last time I'd let that happen. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror, really looked. And for the first time in years, I saw a woman I respected. She wasn't broken. She was waking up. Healing didn't happen overnight. But piece by piece, I rebuilt. I found a new job, one that paid well, respected my time, and gave me room to breathe. I moved out of the old house and into a quiet apartment downtown, where I could walk to the market on weekends and sit in the park without anyone needing anything from me. And with every step forward, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. But I never forgot. Not the way they twisted the story to make me the villain. Not the way my mother turned cold. Not how James and Angela stole from me and then made it seem like I was ungrateful for noticing. I didn't obsess over it. I didn't stalk their social media or gossip with distant relatives. I just waited. Because time reveals character better than words ever can. About 2 years after they cut me off, I heard through an old mutual friend that James and Angela were in trouble. Big trouble. James had started a business, with Mom's help, of course, and it had failed miserably. Loans were piling up. Their house had been refinanced to cover debts. Angela had quietly gone back to work, something she swore she'd never do again. And Mom? She was in the hospital. Early signs of heart failure. No insurance. No savings. And guess who no longer had the money to fix everything? The golden boy. And suddenly, they remembered I existed. It started with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Marissa. I know it's been a while. Mom's in the hospital and things are complicated. She really wants to see you. No apology, no accountability, just a call for help." Wrapped in guilt and nostalgia. I stared at that message for a long time. I didn't respond. Then came an email from Angela. "We all made mistakes. But this isn't the time to hold grudges. Family is family. We need to come together." Grudges? They discarded me like a used napkin, and now they wanted to come together? I wasn't angry anymore. Not even bitter. What I felt now was clarity. So I waited. Let them squirm. Let them wonder what I'd do. I had spent years living in their shadows, playing the role of the silent helper. But now, I was the one with the choice. Would I save them? Or would I let them taste the silence they once served me? Tell me in the comments. If you were in my place, would you walk back into their lives? Or close the door forever? Because what I did next, well, let's just say it surprised even me. Just when I thought I held all the cards, life dealt me one I didn't see coming. It was early spring when I finally decided to visit my mother in the hospital. Not for them, but for me. I needed closure. I needed to look her in the eyes and see if there was any part of her that remembered who I really was, before the silence and the betrayal. She was thinner than I remembered. Her skin looked pale against the white sheets, and the room smelled of antiseptic and wilted flowers. She turned her head when I entered, and for a moment, just one fleeting second, I saw recognition, then tears. Not mine, hers. I didn't know everything, Marissa. I swear. I stood there, stiff and cold, unsure if this was a show or sincerity. "Didn't know what?" I asked. And that's when the truth spilled out. Not all at once. My mother was too proud for that. But in choppy fragments. She told me James had handled everything. The bank accounts, her medical paperwork, even the sale of my father's old investments. She hadn't looked at the details. She trusted him. "I didn't realize he moved money out of your accounts. Or that he lied about the house title." Wait, what? I felt my heart race. The house title? She looked away. "He told me he was adding his name for legal reasons. Said it would protect me if something happened." It hit me like ice water. My childhood home, the only place I had any legal stake in, had been quietly signed away. My name was removed. My brother now owned it outright. That was my father's legacy. My mother and I were both on the deed, until I was conveniently erased. And she signed the papers. Suddenly, I understood everything. They hadn't just used my money. They had stolen my future. While I was helping Mom with bills and care, James was plotting how to transfer ownership, using her trust, and my absence, to clear the way. And now that the business had failed, they were planning to sell the house. "He said it's the only way to pay off the debt," she whispered. But it was never supposed to go this far. I stood there, shaking, 1,000 emotions roaring through me. Rage, sorrow, betrayal, disbelief. She reached for my hand. "I made mistakes, but please help us. Help him." That word, help, hit differently now. For years, I had offered help without being asked. Now, after being robbed of family, trust, and inheritance, they were asking again. No apology, no restitution, just another expectation that I would show up and save the day. But this time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt clear. I left the hospital with my back straight and my heart heavy, but resolved. The next morning, I scheduled a meeting with a real estate lawyer. I pulled every document I had, including emails and messages from when I paid for the mortgage, renovation receipts, and old bank transfers. The lawyer looked at everything. Then he said the words I'd been waiting to hear. You may not be on the title anymore, but if you can prove you contributed financially and were removed without proper consent, you might have a case for equitable interest, especially if your mother was manipulated. A case. A chance. Not revenge. Justice. I didn't want their house. I didn't want to ruin their lives. I just wanted the truth acknowledged. The damage named. For once, I wanted them to feel the weight of what they had done. The legal process took months. Quiet, strategic, and oddly satisfying. I didn't tell them. I didn't warn them. I just let the truth begin its slow, inevitable rise to the surface. While they scrambled to find a buyer for the house, thinking it would solve all their problems, I built a case brick by brick, with documentation, receipts, testimony from a financial advisor I once worked with, and emails that showed exactly how much I had contributed over the years. Angela, as it turned out, had kept detailed spreadsheets of home expenses. She was proud of her budgeting. She had no idea I'd eventually gain access to those records during discovery. It clearly showed my funds were used for major improvements, upgrades they later claimed to have paid entirely on their own. When their lawyer reached out, trying to resolve things quietly, my attorney gave them a number, a settlement figure that matched what they had taken, adjusted with interest. The silence that followed was delicious. They were stunned. They had no idea I had the strength or the will to fight back. For years, I'd been the quiet one, the helper, the harmless one, but not anymore. Eventually, they agreed to settle. They didn't want this dragged into court, especially not with their finances already in shambles. And the condition I added? A formal signed acknowledgement that I had contributed significantly to the home's equity and that I was removed from the title without full informed consent. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was a record. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't dramatic, that I wasn't ungrateful. I was right. And they knew it now. After the paperwork was signed, I received a final message from James. You could have just let it go. Family doesn't take each other to court. I didn't respond, because what he never understood was this. I had let a lot go, for years, out of love, out of fear, out of conditioning. But love without respect isn't family. It's a trap, and I had finally walked out of it. The day I received the settlement check, I didn't go shopping. I didn't celebrate with champagne. I sat on my small balcony, a cup of tea in hand, and breathed. That money didn't change me. What changed me was finally learning how to choose myself. My therapist asked me what I would do now, if I'd try to reconnect, visit my mother again, open the door to James and Angela if they came calling. I thought about it, truly. Then I shook my head. I don't need an apology anymore, I said. I just need peace. And I have that now. Some people believe closure comes with a confrontation, a final argument, a dramatic scene where truths are thrown like daggers and someone storms out of a room. But for me, closure came in the quietest of ways. About a month after the legal agreement was finalized, I received a call from the hospital. It was one of the nurses who had cared for my mother. She told me Mom had been asking for me again, said my name in her sleep, that she had grown quieter since the whole family situation unfolded. I listened. I thanked her, and I hung up. And then I cried, because I still loved her, even after everything, even though she stood silent when she should have stood beside me. But I also knew I couldn't go back. Not to that hospital, not to that woman, not to that version of myself that would have walked in, absorbed the guilt, and tried once again to make everyone else feel better. I had spent too much of my life making room for people who left none for me. Instead, I wrote a letter, not for her to read, not to be sent, just for me. I wrote everything I had held inside for years, how it felt to be invisible in my own family, how painful it was to be told I was too emotional every time I asked for respect, how exhausting it was to be useful but never valued. Then I burned it. Page by page, I watched the words curl into ash, and with them, I let go of the weight I had carried for so long. Not for them, for me. Because forgiveness, I've learned, doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means refusing to carry pain that doesn't belong to you anymore. A few weeks later, I passed by my old neighborhood. I hadn't planned to. I was on the way to meet a friend when a detour took me down that familiar road. And there it was, our house. Only, it wasn't ours anymore. There was a new family on the porch. A little girl was playing with sidewalk chalk, her laughter echoing through the warm air. Someone had painted the shutters blue. There were flower pots where my mother's rocking chair used to be, and for a brief moment, I stood there, frozen, not with regret, but with release. That house held too many ghosts for me. Now it belonged to someone else. And so did that version of me. The one who stayed quiet, stayed small, stayed obedient in the name of love. She didn't live there anymore. I walked away smiling, not because I won, but because I was finally free. It's strange, isn't it? How people will call you ungrateful the moment you stop sacrificing yourself for them. How they rewrite the story the second you step out of the role they assigned you. For a long time, I believed I needed to prove my worth to be loved. That if I worked hard enough, gave enough, forgave enough, eventually, they'd see me. But I've learned something far more valuable than approval. I've learned to see myself, to recognize that love without respect is manipulation. That silence in the face of betrayal is not strength. It's slow self-erasure. And that walking away, no matter how painful, can sometimes be the most loving thing you do. For yourself. I didn't get the apology I hoped for. I didn't get a hug, or tears, or the soft ending people imagine in stories like this. But I got peace. I got my name back, my voice, my dignity. And you know what? That's more than enough. Because now, when I wake up in the morning, I don't feel tension in my chest. I don't dread the next phone call. I don't shrink when someone questions my choices. I sit in my own skin and know I chose myself, finally, fully. And if you've ever been in a place like mine, feeling erased, silenced, blamed, I want you to hear me when I say this. You are not difficult. You are not dramatic. You are not ungrateful. You are allowed to demand respect. You are allowed to walk away, even from family, especially from family, when they forget how to love you right. Have you ever had to choose yourself over people you loved? Did they ever make you feel like you were wrong for it? Tell me your story in the comments. I promise. I'll read every single one. And if this story spoke to something inside you, leave a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. Because we still have so many stories to tell. And this was just one of mine. Until next time.